Good morning and a warm welcome to our second episode of Africa Talks, the digital transformation imperative, how COVID-19 speeds up Africa's and Europe's digitalization. My IJP colleague Eka and me, we are welcoming all of you today. In these unsecure, not foreseeable times, we want to build a digital platform for exchange of knowledge, and ideas between journalists and experts from African and European countries. We want to talk about impacts and consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Marco Vollmer. I'm member of the board of the International Journalist Programs, IJP, and I would like to introduce Eka, my colleague, to you.
Good morning. My name is Eka Neumann. I'm the coordinator for the IJP Africa program, and I'm very much delighted that we are able to discuss in the second part of our web series the European, German, African perspective and the light COVID-19. And I would like to highlight, and I think you probably might see her in a second, that we also have Pittelkow, who is a graphic recorder, and she will follow our discussion closely. And at the end, we will see what she's been inspired to do.
Our topic today, the digital transformation imperative. Digital technologies are driving change. Digitalization transforms economies and people's life. And COVID-19 pandemic has amplified those hopes. The pandemic illustrates the value of digitalization, but also the challenges of digitalization. How to solve that mobile data download speed in Africa reaching 1/3 of that in other parts of the world. Affordability remains an obstacle to adoption as the cost of accessing digital technologies remains high relative to incomes. How to deal with these problems, and this we want to discuss and with very inspiring and very competent experts. We have invited Michael Pittelkow. He works for the German company SAP, the market leader in enterprise application software, as an executive economic expert for development cooperation. In addition to this current role, he also gained experience as general manager public services and development partner executive for SAP. And he has also driven the agriculture industry for SAP in Africa. Michael has spent almost his entire professional career in driving transformation of governments and public services entities. He owns a rare combination of sound public administration expertise, capacity building experience, institutional development and transformation know-how, as well as deep ICT knowledge. All of this paired with a very good understanding of development cooperation and public-private partnerships in this context. According, and what I have read on his short bio on LinkedIn, he has taken in and demonstrated some core values I would like to share with you, as there are: keep the promise, tell it like it is, stay curious, build bridges, not silos, and embrace differences. And now Eka will present our second speaker.
Yes, so I'd like to present to you, and we are very happy to have you. Thank you very much, Mr. Dapo. He is the Executive Director of Dakins and a Senior Software Engineer. He's been working with companies such as Porsche and Siemens, especially in the field of security and automation. As a consultant, he worked for Deutsche Bank project as well as for the Deutsche Bahn, German Railway, and he designs and develops global IT projects which are themed around mobility and which serve a very specific need for the mobility on the African continent, but he will tell us more about in his presentation later on.
Before we start with Michael's input, I would like to invite all of our participants to contribute to our discussion. You are more than welcome to enrich our talk with your questions or comments. You can also leave a comment on our Facebook event chat or on our YouTube stream. Now, Michael, the floor is yours, and we are really looking forward to your input.
I should unmute my line first. Thank you very much for this. And one thing I've learned is I should have a look on my LinkedIn profile. It sounds, at least it raises the bar. So I hope I can deliver to that one. I really have to have a look. Yeah. So today's session, which I find really interesting, is about digital transformation, or let's say challenges, chances, opportunities in digitalization in the light of COVID-19. And when I thought about this in preparation of this session, the first question I asked myself, well, is COVID a root cause for digitalization, or is it just rather a facilitator, a driver? And from the way I phrased this question, you can see I look at it as a driver. The need for global change is obvious, and it's there for decades. But COVID-19 raises the awareness. So it's obvious the global population is growing, and there are questions like how to cater for the basic needs of food, shelter, education, participation, of course, how to offer economic opportunity to everybody, and how to ensure that no one's left behind. A difficult question. Climate is changing, how to counter this. This is the second major question of our decades. And then, of course, the global resources are not unlimited. So how to drive sustainability, how to share in a fair manner, leaving no one behind. And in summary, it's about providing perspective and opportunity to everyone. And I think it's obvious COVID is not the reason or driver for this fundamental need of change, but it's a catalyst. And that's something I find very interesting these days. But it also adds complexity and urgency. So what do I mean by this? The question is response. Should digitalization respond to COVID-19 threat, or should we talk about recovery? And I decided to talk more about recovery. So will be of COVID, that's for sure. And digital transformation then deals ex machina for economic recovery. And let me scope it a little bit more. And I'm sorry for all these preliminary remarks, but it's important to understand the dynamics of digitalization and to know what we're about. So digital technologies, the more narrow thing that we all think about when we hear about digitalization, are important tools for the flood of goods and capital and knowledge around the world. It entails connectivity. So Mark, you referred already to the download rate. can only be achieved on a country or even a regional or continental level. But you can also look at it from a single economic actor like a company, but even like this farmer that I was just referring to, the smallholder farmer. And it's almost industry agnostic. So let me talk about the digital transformation with a scope on the digital economy, so more on a country level and on applications. Other aspects are equally important, but not part of my area of expertise. Then on another note also, and then I'll end my preliminary remarks and come to my thesis. Africa and Europe are extreme the silver bullet. In itself, it can't address and solve all problems at hand, very important, but it can be an enabler of inclusiveness, sustainability, and opportunity. That's my second thesis. My third one is digital transformation needs to be looked at holistically and not in silos. It cannot be planned, so there's no such thing like a master plan to get to a digital economy, but it can be nurtured with the right conditions and right environment, so opportunity can be created. Let's look at these three theses, and let's start with COVID-19 as driver. So we're now in this pandemic situation since, what is it, 10 months or so, something like that. And obviously, reliable scientific data is not yet available. So it's more driven by perception than following science. But that perception is clearly that in Europe, we can notice that social distancing and home office, and all these things have given a push on digitalization, a very, very clear push. And it also showed the shortfalls of the current digitalization in some countries. By the way, and this is my very private remark, also in my home country. So there's clear push on digitalization. Some effects of this have been less traffic on the streets, but in return, more data volume, changed buying behavior, growing importance of interconnected value chains. At the same time, we also see a threat on globalization, or globalization being attacked as a response to economic risks. And we also see that people have noticed and companies have noticed that increased efficiency and awareness in business can be done or can be achieved differently. What do I mean with this? A year ago, in my partners in governments, but also in private sector, many of them would not have envisioned that you can, of course, have meetings virtually. It was simply not the case, period. This has dramatically changed. And this is just one example, and there are many of those examples. So the openness to new ways of acting, new ways of creating value chains is clearly there, and that's a driver, and that's coming from COVID, clearly. So from that perspective, COVID is a driver. Looking at Africa, Africa was already ahead when it comes to openness to digital transformation and innovation. Again, compared continent to continent, there are, of course, also European countries that are really far ahead, looking at Estonia, for example. And there are also African countries that are followers. Nevertheless, in general, Africa was ahead. One example that everybody knows who's looking at digitalization in Africa is M-Pesa, just one of those examples. So digital money or money transfer via mobile phones. Nevertheless, it can be observed that there's another push coming from COVID. So, for example, the IASS Potsdam, that's an institute from the University of Potsdam, they observed that more online services are now being delivered in African cities, in the major African cities. That's a clear push coming from COVID, as they say. Also, more and more digital solutions and very advanced digital solutions are being used in fighting the pandemic, including predictive analytics, so machine learning, all these things become more and more into play. So that's as a proof for my first thesis. Yes, COVID-19 is a driver to digital transformation. My second was digital transformation is not the silver bullet, but is an enabler, or can be an enabler if it played right. So look at private sector. Why can't it be an enabler? I spoke about perspective and opportunity for everyone as the ultimate target, and this means job creation. At the end, it means job creation. And when you look at job creation coming from digital transformation or digitalization, you have not only the jobs of those that do the coding or really work with a computer, but you have a real huge set of digitally impacted jobs. Again, my example of the smallholder farmer, and why did I pick it? Because I have an example where smallholder farmers collecting shea nuts in Ghana have put their power together and are offering now shea nuts, which by the way is a raw product that goes into pharmaceutics and cosmetics, and bundle their power where intermediates are reduced and where all of a sudden these smallholder farmers take part via digital tools, digital means in global regional and global value chains. And with this, earn much more money. And you can see the impact on families, on skill building, on children going to school, all of that. So that's a digitally impacted job because the use of a mobile phone, one mobile phone per 1,000 farmers, by the way, so it's really affordable. The use of mobile phone makes a difference to a smallholder farmer, digitally impacted jobs. Yes, and there is transformation. Secondly, you have the digitally enabled jobs, those that can only be created with digital means. The typical thing is the food delivery worker, but let me pick another one. Volkswagen is currently driving an initiative in Rwanda. It's called Moving Rwanda together with Siemens, and we're also playing a humble role in that context. And here, new jobs, decent jobs are being created in ride sharing, ride hailing, and offering of postal services that could not have been thought of without digitalization. And by the way, it's also very sustainable because it's an e-mobility project. That's on a separate note. So that's the digitally enabled job, digitally impacted, digitally enabled. Then you, of course, have the digital jobs as such. Best example here is the ICT consultant, somebody who's doing coding, who's implementing commercial off the shelf, but also we see rising companies in the hardware space. One very, very interesting example from my perspective is Mara phones from Rwanda, where you can get a basic mobile phone, smartphone, already at a price point of $89 US, going up to 270s, 280s, and that's manufactured in Rwanda, in Africa, for Africa especially, although I've also ordered one, so at least one will be in Europe very soon. So you see there are also opportunity coming from that. Digital transformation, hardware required, produced in Africa for Africa. And then, of course, you have, as I said, the transformation of and improving of existing value chain and new business models. So private sector, digital impacted job, enabled digital jobs, transformation of value chains, and new business models. In the public sector, that's also important, digital transformation as enabler. We see coming from COVID as well, better and more ubiquitous service delivery, accessible and affordable, also in rural areas, not only for the privileged ones. Then you have improved predictability and transparency of governments, also as a driver to attract domestic and foreign investments. And that's very important when me coming from Europe, being part of the team Europe, you have I believe also in values like participation, citizen participation. And you have here with come from digitalization, new tools. Forrester has just recently launched an interesting CX study that I advise to have a look at. So that's also where new opportunities come from digitalization and digital transformation in the public sector. As I said, it can only be harvested through a holistic approach. A regulatory framework needs to be in place, and that should be regional, continental, probably even global. Best example, data markets. Infrastructure needs to be in place. Connectivity is the obvious one, but there's also other infrastructure that needs to be in place, like application infrastructure, e-identity, registries of different kind, things like that. And of course, capacity building, skills development is important. That's what I mean when I say you can nurture it. You cannot plan it, but nurture it. This needs to be in place to nurture it. And then my last point, and then I'll finish my intervention, hopefully still on time. That's the joint opportunity for Europe and Africa. These new ways that I've just mentioned, new ways of collaboration, make it obvious that the geographical distance between Africa and Europe, between, let's say, Estonia and Botswana, pretty far away, is bridged by new ways of collaboration, new ways of value creation and value change. That opens new opportunity to both continents. And this does not mean that Europe just exports to Africa. It very much means also the opposite. Africa exporting ideas and goods, not only raw materials to Europe. So very new business models also from that perspective. That's reflected in the new European African Union partnership models that I also would advise to have a look at when talking about digitalization here in this context. And of course, partnership between private sector entities. And that's where I think a real change needs to happen, or is on its way, but needs to be pushed for. Strategic partnerships between private sector entities, but also between public and private sector entities are more important than ever these days. Driving change through private sector collaboration, especially in Africa, when budgets are constrained and in slow growing economies, that's the way to go. There's no doubt, respecting everybody's interest, and this is reflected also in the Kampala principles of public-private collaboration in development cooperation. Do I see a risk? I was painting a bright picture. Do I see a risk coming from COVID? Yes. Of course, if played right, digital transformation can be a significant opportunity to drive inclusive and sustainable development, no doubt. Digital transformation is more than software only, I mentioned it, but the risk is that post-pandemic, the push on digital transformation might slow down because money might be redirected into short-term recovery activities. But digital transformation requires continuous focus and investments. There's imperative. So sessions like this, from my personal perspective, not being politician, but a private sector a representative interest in politics, sessions like this need to stress the point. It is not a sprint, it is a midterm race, and investment needs to continue. Let me stop my intervention here. I could talk another hour about it, but I should stop and leave the floor to my counterparts here. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Dapo, now we are coming to your part.
Okay. Okay, can I go in?
Yes, you can. You can start. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me? I believe you can hear me. Okay. Yeah. My name
please
is.
Start with your presentation. We are curious to hear your presentation.
Okay. Yeah, my name is Dapo Oyeneye, and I'm a software engineer and an IT consultant. As I was introduced before, I do consulting, and I also have a consulting firm here in Berlin, where we develop solutions that meet, most especially in emerging markets. When we mean emerging market, we look more into African area. And we looked at the challenges, real challenges and opportunity. We talk to people who come with idea and see how best whether we can get a technology that is already existing on the market, or we need to customize something for them, or we need to do a kind of synergy with customization and the standard solution. That's what we do at Dakins. Having said that, let me come back to the topic, which says the digital transformation imperative and how COVID-19 speed up African and European digitalization. This is a very nice topic at a very nice time. And I think the imperativeness of this digitalization in Africa, one cannot overemphasize this at this time of COVID-19. And what COVID does is that what is already in existence, or what we all knew for so many years, COVID now accelerates the digitalization of the entire world, not only Africa or Europe, but the entire world, because digitalization now is what keeps the entire business moving when we can't even go out. Like my the earlier speaker said, Mr. Pittelkow, the digitalization in, for instance, in video conferencing, having meeting, what people always think is something of the future is even things of today. It's what we use on the current day. But what do we do at Dakins why we see that digitalization is imperative? We looked at the population of Africa, that is a huge growing population, and the speed they're growing, and the challenges in infrastructure. And we now thought of how can we use digitalization to bridge this huge population to make the mobility there more easier, economical, and faster. Like what we're doing is not, I wouldn't say is totally revolutionary, but we looked at some area where we say, okay, with digitalization, we can accelerate, for instance, movement, job creation. We can also help new businesses to come up, to create new businesses, and by so doing, enabling the economic of this area. And the digitalization transformation in this area is that in every aspect of our life now, in most African countries, we see that the use of mobile phone is very, very high. And nearly every, for instance, we say if you go in the city of Lagos or Kenya or Nairobi, nearly every second person, or you should have a smartphone. Every second person have a smartphone. And the use of smartphone has even exceeded that of the laptop. And we know that we can use based on this availability of this device, we can use it now to communicate and get so many solutions to the people. And what we now did is that in our own case, we look at e-mobility, something that has been a problem for us in many African countries. If anybody enter any European country right now, you can take your phone, you can ask and request either the Deutsche Bahn app or the BVG app or the MVG app from München and say, okay, I want to go from point A to point B. And it will lead you to that area. It will tell you which transport you will use, where you will need to reconnect to another to connect to another form of transportation, and up to where you get to your destination. In our own case, at least some application I've tried. We have, for instance, Uber now, and we have Boom, which are trying to do a kind of digital hailing. But we said this just cover a very, very minimal aspect of the entire population of Africa and the entire population of people who really need that mobility and to be digitally connected. So we looked at, okay, what can we do? Because in many of these countries, the government is very, very behind in providing a kind of structural or organized transportation when it comes to land mobility. You can't easily connect from one point to another because the entire thing is managed by the private businesses, which are not in any way connected. So we now said, okay, what can we do to create a kind of seamless transportation for the people in the continent? And to enable this disjointed and disconnected private mobility to function as one whole system without increasing the cost of mobility and making mobility available in every area. So we developed, we started the development of an application that has the mobile app on the back end, everything. We started the project 2019, and we now try to connect different kind of mobility into one network to create a kind of smart network where disjointed mobility in the something you can just now say, if even you're a visitor, you can now come into Nairobi, you say you want to go to downtown from the airport, you don't really need to hail. You can hail a digital ride, but you can drive in the normal connected, what's it called, the normal transportation in the country. So what we now did is that each provider, each operator of the mobility network just provide the information, create a route, and on that route, you see different kind of mobility, whether it's the bike, whether it's the tricycle, whether it's a bus, whether it's a normal taxi. You can now see how you can connect from one point to another easily. This is not a government organized thing. This is just organizing a route on using a mobility application to create a route and to give people information from getting from point A to B. This is an aspect of the solution that we created, and we see that, okay, it could help to a huge extent for the normal user. Being you in your corner of the house, you have visibility to how the entire transportation is moving in the area you have. You can now book a seat on any of the connection and to connect you to every other transportation you want to ride on. Having said that, we already talking to people who find it interesting, who say, okay, let's go into a pilot project in that, and we already working on that. So we also looked at some other areas of businesses where digital application is needed. The earlier speaker spoke on creation of job, which is one of the area, and the farming area. We have in our products one that target the farm producers, and we know that coming from Africa, we know the problem of the people in the rural area having farm products, but they cannot get it to the city, or they don't even know who is interested in the product to have a real value for their product. So we created also a platform, a small platform where you just show your product, and a digital logistic platform that anybody interested can just put in, coming for the product and hail the logistic. Without them meeting or having anything, they can connect and bring the product to the destination. So you can get easily your product from the farm to the city, having this kind of hub. And we believe that it will also help in elevating the standard of living in the rural area and reduces even urban migration. That is, nearly everybody living in the rural area trying to come to the city. And also, we looked at what do we do to alleviate poverty. And these are one of the areas we find that digital transformation is highly imperative. And we are using it. And we have some small companies in Nigeria. Just last week or so, a company that is doing paystack was bought over. There's two young guys doing some nice, great things, and whereby the payment mechanism is made so easy as never before. You don't need to do anything to make, you don't need to go to bank or even have a bank application or even have a bank account for you to make serious bank payments. So we found all this development that is happening, and is part of the, I think it's part of the catalyst that we found that being used in Africa, we accelerate not only our economy, but we enable us to bridge the gap that most African countries miss in the industrial era. And we believe that using digitalization, it will enable us to couple our business together with so many parts of the world. What COVID-19 also helps in showing is that the lack of our government in the government area, the civil servant, the lack of digitalization has really impeded in the service they offer. We see a lot of, there's a report that came out that shows that due to digitalization, it increases a huge number of hunger and increase the level of poverty in Africa. For instance, in Nigeria. And they said the reason why is that the civil servant cannot intervene because of lack of some digital mechanism of data. The data needed to really go to the area where those help are needed. So we believe that developing more solutions to help the civil servant, to help smooth operation of the government, we highly help to transform the African economy and to give the people the required service that can help them in either in the business or in the private life. Before I complete the whole thing, we need to do something which I think most especially the company in Europe and the new techie guys in Africa, there's a huge disconnect within the digitalization in many parts of the world and Africa. And there is need, and I thank ICA for bringing up this kind of something. There is need for us to build a synergy whereby we have a lot of young dynamic youth there in Africa doing serious things, how we can easily help these people to connect to the real economy. That is, when I mean the real economy, is both to the industry and to the government, to enable them bring the entire effort and the benefit of digitalization into the real stream, either in e-government or in the businesses. We need to educate a lot of private businesses on how to use the how to use digitalization to increase the efficiency, to get it to the entire mainstream. and this is still
Dapo,
lacking.
yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, Dapo, thank you. I'm going in here now because we are running out of time otherwise. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt you. Maybe you finish your thought here and then we going into the discussion, please.
Okay. So based on this, let me just round up that we will be needing a kind of synergy both in Europe and in Africa to enable us use the optimize the benefit of digitalization. Thank you.
Thanks, Dapo. I just, because as we are now have still 20 minutes to discuss the topic, I would like to open the floor. And if we are, when we have questions from our participants, I would ask to bring them in. Otherwise, I would start the discussion with regard to Micah and to Dapo with one question from my side. What, from your opinion, now is needed to create more African champions like Jumia or others? There are digital champions already in place and on the continent active. What would you say, Michael? What is needed to create more of these?
That's a very good question, and a lot of smart people, smarter than me, have given it some thought. So my gut feeling is, first, I don't think that you can plan for smart for champions. So you have just to bring a lot of companies, give them the opportunity, bring a lot of them into the play, and hope that there will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 unicorns, however they be. So how can that be done? The first thing, of course, it is a funding question. And this is not so much when I work a lot with startups in Africa, and there are excellent people really doing with excellent ideas, brilliant technicians. But the first thing is that they are lacking is, once their product is ready, they have not planned for the valley of death that's coming afterwards. That is the time when the first 2-3 years when you really suffer because the adoption of the market of your product is not there yet. So funding mechanisms for this time, venture capital, a blended financing with probably development cooperation or public sector taking the first loss branch, or whatever the case might be. I'm not a financial engineer, but that's important. Don't look at the time until they have developed their minimal viable product only. Also look at the time afterwards. That's the first thing. And this needs to follow very good rules, select those that are most promising, fund them rather than funding literally hundreds and hundreds and hoping one will survive. The second thing, I firmly believe in collaboration. And that can also be a private sector to private sector collaboration. There's no point in reinventing the wheel or in fighting as a small company those that are already in the market, but collaboration provides opportunity to everybody. What do I mean with this? Very often we have a tendency to focus on startups and nurture those startups, help them, but ignore companies like ours, for example, but there are others out there that can help startups for mutual success. So create an atmosphere and drive collaboration also between the, let's say, incumbents, the corporates and the startups for mutual benefit. That's my second one. The second point. And the third point, as I said, I work a lot with startups in Africa, and I also noticed that over and above the fact that they are really good, really great ideas, good technicians, they very often lack the business skills. So how to position a product, how to respond to a tender, all of these type of things. So you probably need to create an environment where startups, African startups, or can learn how to act, how to behave in a market, in a competitive marketplace, and then take them by the hand. That can be done in the collaboration with corporates. This can also be done with special regulations on tendering processes. There are a lot of ideas out there, but these would be my three things. Finance the valley of death, drive collaboration between corporates and startups, and create a learning environment where they can really gain experience. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Dapo, have you any insight from your side on this?
Yeah, Michael, I've already answered most of the question. What I would just say is that, like you said, we have a lot of smaller company guys with new ideas, and the problem is just also surviving and coming up. But what I will just put as an small input is that apart from the collaboration, coaching, and all that that is needed, there is a mechanism. We should look for a mechanism where we can find a way to sustain this idea and a kind of incubating system to sustain this idea and bring them up. There are some small ones, the one still need to provide more so that they incubate. During the incubation, they will be nurtured until they grow to the point that, okay, they can sustain on their own. I think that one we need to do more of it, incubating of smaller and bigger, smaller ideas within this area, within this region.
Thank you. Ika, do you want to add a question on?
Yes. Yes. Apart from the financing, which other obstacles are you facing in the implementation of your projects? I know you have various projects in different places, so which other obstacles do you face?
Yeah, if one is looking at from instance from our project, we looked at because we try to synergize with others who are doing some things that are maybe closer to us, that we don't really need to reinvent the wheel, so that we can go together and market the whole thing. But there is synergy because most of them, they are far away. We still don't have, and this COVID has also, we do a lot through Zoom meeting and all that, but we are having challenges when it comes to whether when we need to really do a kind of brainstorming or testing a particular product within the market, getting into the market just for the trial purpose. There are a lot of challenges in that, or a kind of making a pilot scheme run and to really monitor it. These are real challenges that we are facing right now, because some of the things we are doing, we also develop some hardware as well with it, which we want to get to the area where we need to pilot them. But these challenges are kind of a bit of where you need to be physically present. But these challenges due to the COVID-19 problem right now.
I would.
Apart from that.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, apart from that, there isn't much in the area there, because financing is always a challenge. We are trying to address that through contacting seed funder, capital angels, or capital. But we know that some of these products still need to have some traction for them to really see what are the potentials in it before they come in. Like anybody coming in more and putting in money, want to see, okay, what are the potential of this thing sustaining itself, or the acceptability of the entire product in the market.
Maybe, yeah, Michael.
Sorry, if I may add to that. And as SAP, we're in the business to business. So you may or may not know that I'm also working with other European IT companies in a Digital for Development coalition. So let me take this broader look. That what we jointly also observe, over and above what Dapo just said, which is all true, and I can sign all of that, is protectionism. So we see a rising protectionism in Africa, and I fully understand where this comes from, because Africa needs a fair share in the value creation. There's no doubt about it. But the way that we see it now somehow limits the opportunity for both Europe and Africa, and we're talking about Europe and Africa. So that's why I'm such an advocate for collaboration for mutual benefit, job creation in both geographies. That's one thing. We of course see the lack of skills and capacity. I'm not talking about the large cities, so Nairobi, Lagos, Cairo. There's no limit to capacity and knowledge. But when you look into more distant or rural areas, or even secondary cities already, this becomes difficult. So that's the second obstacle that we face. And then you can also see that Africa as a continent is to a certain extent also a geopolitical playing field. So you see investments and protectionism of companies that are not African companies, come from other areas of the world, that are really pushed into the market with high government support. So that means there's a lack of level playing field as we speak. These would be the three.
Yeah, thanks again for this additional remark, and maybe like to find a kind of conclusion or conclusion answer. I would ask one last question from my point of view, Michael, and also Dapo. As we heard, digital technologies could be harnessed to improve education, health, and livelihoods, as well as fostering more environmentally sustainable ways of production and consumption. I think this is well understood, and I think here are a lot of opportunities. On the other hand, I'm still seeking for advice, and maybe you can give us this advice, Michael. And what would be your tip? What would be your idea for, on the one hand, African governments, and on the other hand, African entrepreneurs, and like vice versa in Europe, on the German European side, to contribute to more socially and environmentally beneficial use of digital technologies? What would be here your advice? How can we strengthen these developments? Michael, would you like to start? Or Dapo, please go ahead.
Dapo, please. Yeah, I still need to think.
Okay. Like I said earlier on that there's a report recently during the COVID-19, and they see how the government failed the people, and this is part of what brought to the protest that we see in the last few weeks. And due to the lack of information, due to lack of digital penetration in the government, they couldn't really offer good assistance and to get to the people at this time of need. And this has been the problem, that the government doesn't see the digitalization of the processes in the civil servant as a means to really work with the people. But the COVID-19 have really now shown that without digitalization, or the lack of this digitalization in the process of government, is killing not only the people, but the entire economy of the nation. So what our advice, or what our own advice, what we are trying to do is that we see that many of the government lack money, or they are not having really budget for digitalization in the country. So what we are trying to do is that we are looking for a way to partner with some of these government, develop a process which you can use as a pilot scheme. This is where we feel that the European country can come in, assist in this pilot scheme, development of this pilot scheme. Let them see and embrace that thing in a gradual process. By so doing, they really see the advantage of digitalization, whereby they can use to help the populace, the citizenry, and also to promote some other things. And I said also from business to business, the business aspect, because the government has to be the first pusher of acceptance of digitalization. We see what is happening in Germany, in many European countries. The government are the first pusher. And in some cases, the business and the private sector push the entire digitalization, and the government follows. But now the government have taken over the control and say, now we want to push it all over. The same thing needs to be done in Africa. We need to help the country and the government to realize the potential in the digitalization era and transformation, for them to now push businesses who will be able to now interconnect using digitalization to enhance the business, create more jobs, create more innovation, and to get the people out of poverty.
I am tempted to complement this with come from talk to action. I totally agree to Dapo with this. But would also like to add another aspect. And your question for Marco was, if I'm not mistaken, how can environmental and social responsibility be driven in all of this digitalization. That's at least how I understood your question. And there's a saying in German and maybe in other languages as well that means if you only have a hammer, every problem you see is a nail. And so forgive me if I again see a nail, because again, I firmly believe openness and collaboration is the only way forward to drive this. And here again, between the continents, coming from the top, but also between public sector and private sector, bring the Kampala principles into life. That's all. Apologies for being so rude and direct. A lot of that is lip service as we speak. So good intention, but I don't see the traction on the ground. That's what is important: collaboration between public and private sector, also regional collaboration. And then there's another thing that I consider to be relevant. I know it's wishful thinking. That is when you come to investment decisions, when you drive the business or the digital transformation of your country or your company. Also take a look at the Sustainable Development Goals. We haven't mentioned them today, but when you talk about social responsibility, environmental responsibility, you can't get around the Sustainable Development Goals. There's no way. And understand that there is no contradiction between the Sustainable Development Goals on the one hand and business cases on the other hand, and the connection of Sustainable Development Goals and business cases that will lead to environmental and social responsible business. So my advice would be collaborate and take care about that.
So thank you, gentlemen. I think that was a quick but also a deep dive into the challenges, the opportunities of digitalization, especially on the African continent. I think it was worth that we have focused much stronger on the African continent than on the European continent and perspective than on our challenges we are also facing. And my point is always, yes, we have talked about the African continent and about things to do, but there are also a lot of things to do here on the European ground, as we all know. This is important just, I think, to mention at the end. Due to some technical reasons, we couldn't really involve other participants to contribute, but we will check these things so that we can improve in our next talks. For the time being, I would really like to thank very much Mr. Michael Pittelkow to have joined our conversation, and I would also like to thank you, Dapo Oyeneye, the Executive Director of Dakins Consulting, to give us his really valuable input and insights out of a perspective as an entrepreneur located in Berlin, but I think working on the African continent. And I think it has been a fruitful discussion. It will be. We have recorded this discussion, and we will. We could share, and we will share the link to this discussion, so that when people have missed the live chat or live call here, that they can also get the ideas and our insights later. And this is also what digital technology can provide, as we all know. So thank you very much. We are looking forward to discussing with all our followers here on that Africa Talks show in 2 weeks. The next topic next week, we have a break. We make a pause due to the elections on the American continent in the United States of America. But in 2 weeks we have our next episode, and again, many thanks to our speakers and many thanks to our contributors and our users who have followed this chat. See you in 2 weeks. Stay healthy, please, and all the best. Goodbye.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank
Goodbye.
you very much. Goodbye.